what will take place in the future. So the dream is true and its interpretation is trustworthy.
There you go. Thank you. So he sees this big statue, and the statue's got different parts to it. And what does Daniel say the different parts of this statue refer to?
4 different kingdoms.
4 different kingdoms that are going to rise, each one after the other in succession. And so, now, he does not name the kingdoms here by name, except for one. Which one is?
He names that the head of gold, the head of gold is the Babylonian kingdom.
That's right. He said.
But he doesn't name the rest of them.
That's right. So he says, Nebuchadnezzar, you are his head of gold. Notice, you are God. He's saying you're God's head of gold. This God's in control here. And then he says another kingdom's going to rise inferior to yours. In history, what kingdom do we know did that? The Medes and the Persian kingdom. After them, who was it?
Greece.
The Greeks.
The Greece. Greece come about with, who was the main king over them?
Alexander.
Alexander the Great. We're going to talk about Alexander the Great a good bit on Wednesday because he's actually prophesied specifically in the book of Daniel. Talked about it. All right, what kingdom appeared after that? Rome. And so that's that 4th kingdom of the iron mixed with clay. And then he says in the dream that there's this stone that was cut out by hand, without hands, that struck the statue and it became a great kingdom. Whose kingdom is that?
God's.
That's God's kingdom. When does he say God's going to set up that kingdom?
But during the time of the Roman kingdom.
That's
well,
right.
sure, I'm not sure how much
Yes.
specifically got, but yeah.
He said, when he's talking about that 4th kingdom, he says, in the days of these kings. Talking about that 4th kingdom. The God of heaven will set up a kingdom. What happened during the time of the Roman Empire? Who walked this earth?
Jesus.
Jesus walked this earth, and what was his message? Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. So just let you know what's coming as far as the biblical story is concerned. You see, this dream right here is laying out this part of the biblical story. The time between the testaments. This time between the end of the Babylonian Empire and its end and the time of Christ, when God's kingdom would be set up. And so we have these 4 kingdoms, and these 4 kingdoms are going to be mentioned repeatedly throughout the book of Daniel in different prophetic contexts. Alright? So now, Nebuchadnezzar is done with his dream. Of course, we have the stone as that great kingdom here. We need to remember that. Of course, Nebuchadnezzar's vision is over, many years past, and now Daniel is going to have a dream of his own. In Daniel chapter 7, someone want to read verses 1 through 7 of Daniel chapter 7. Daniel sees a vision of great beasts. Not parts of a statue, but beasts. And how many beasts are there? There's 4 beasts. Daniel chapter 7, somebody read 1 through 7.
The first year of the king Belshazzar of Babylon, Daniel had a dream with visions in his mind as he was laying in his bed. He wrote down the dream, and here's the summary of his account. Daniel said, in my vision, at night I was watching, and suddenly 4 winds of heaven stirred up the great sea. 4 huge beasts came out of the sea, each one different from another. The first was like a lion, but had eagle's wings. I continued watching it until the wings were torn off. It was lifted up from the ground, set on its feet like a man, and given a human mind. Suddenly another beast appeared, a second one that looked like a bear. It raised up on one side with 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. It was told, get up, gorge yourself on flesh. After this, while I was watching, Suddenly another beast appeared, and it was like a leopard, with 4 wings of a bird on its back. It had 4 heads and was given dominion. After this, while I was watching in the night vision, suddenly a 4th beast appeared, frightening and dreadful, incredibly strong, with large iron teeth. It devoured and crushed and trampled with its feet wherever was left. And it was different from all the beasts before it, and it had 10 horns.
All right, thank you. So, in this vision, what are we looking at?
It's still a 4 kingdoms.
Still the 4 kingdoms. You got, what did the first one look like? A lion with eagle's wings. Now, in this, you kind of got there's symbology being repeated here in the book of Daniel. A lion with eagle's wings. Who was described as having claws like eagles in the book of Daniel?
Nebuchadnezzar, when he was
That's right.
wilderness.
That's right. And then there's a little part in there where it says it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet.
Like a man, sort of like Nebuchadnezzar, when he was in that beast-like state, but then he come out of that and God gave him his senses back. And so there's hints in there that this, once again, is talking about that first kingdom of Babylon. And then you had a second. What was it like? A bear. Now, what was interesting about it? Had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And then it was what? What about it? How did it walk? It was kind of crooked, wasn't it? It was raised up on one side. So the Persian kingdom was made up of really 2 kingdoms put together, the Medes and the Persians. One was more powerful than the other. That's right. That's right. All right. So then he was looking, and then there was another one like a leopard. What was interesting about the leopard? Had 4 wings. Had 4 wings. What did it also have? It had 4 heads. So the number 4 is popping up. And that's what, if we're tracking the empires here, which empire is this going to be? It's going to be Greece. Exactly. So we're going to talk about how the 4 Alexandrian generals ruled over that vast empire on Wednesday night, because that's a big part, and we're also going to mention that today in another vision coming up. Yeah. That's right. He went forth conquering and to conquer. Phrase that's used about him. And he conquered all the way to India on a map. There's actually a map in the book here on page 60. He conquered from all the way from Macedonia and Greece all the way to India. He got to India and he thought, well, I guess that's enough. He turned around and went home back to Macedonia. But like it was just a huge kingdom that he conquered, and conquered it swiftly. He died in his early 30s. Yet he accomplished so much in just those short years.
So speed is talked about here. And then we have a 4th beast. What did it look like?
Terrible and dreadful.
It was terrible. It was just terrible and dreadful.
What did it have in its mouth?
Iron teeth. Where we hear about iron? See, symbology repeating itself.
Iron legs.
Iron legs. And which kingdom was that? That was Rome. So see, there's little hints throughout here that Daniel's having a dream about the same kingdoms that Nebuchadnezzar had. And so here they are here. We've got Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome. That ain't like a pretty little statue, is it? I had to work with AI for a while to give me that image. It kept wanting to put 4 or 5 ribs in the bear's mouth. It had the lion trying to carry a bunch of ribs. It was confused. It took me a while to get that out of AI. I went through the trees. Huh? Real intelligent, yeah, that's right. And it doesn't know how to spell words. Like, forget about AI trying to make an image with complicated words. It does not. They haven't figured out. They'll figure that out. I'm sure AI they'll fix that. It's still early.
Whenever I type in God, it changes it to Hod.
Hod.
Yeah, I want me to look up Hod.
That's weird.
Yeah.
But anyway, now, here's what I want you to think about. Why do you think the difference between this pretty statue and these fierce beasts? They're talking about the same king. Why do you think Daniel's seeing these terrifying beasts?
Didn't see what really was going to happen.
That's right.
It's happened to the people of the Jewish.
That's right. This is the perspective that these kingdoms would have to God's people. Because what are these kingdoms going to do to God's people?
Put them in captivity and persecute.
They're going to persecute them. They're going to persecute them heavily. In fact, Daniel in Daniel chapter 7 was so worried about the 4th beast in particular. He wanted to know, he asked the angel who was revealing this all to him what the 4th beast was, and he got more than he bargained for. He got more than he bargained for. In verse 19, he says, "Then I wish I know the truth about the 4th beast, which was different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, with its teeth of iron and its nails bronze, was devoured, broke in pieces, and trampled the residue with its feet. And the 10 horns that were on his head, and the other horn which came up before, which 3 fell, namely the horn which had eyes and a mouth which spoke pompous words, whose appearance was the Most High God, and the time came for the saints to possess the Most High God, and the time came for the saints to possess the kingdom." He says, thus he said, "The 4th beast shall be a 4th kingdom on the earth, which shall be different from all the other kingdoms. It shall devour the whole earth and trample it, break in pieces. The 10 horns are 10 kings who shall rise from this kingdom. Another shall rise after them, shall be different from the first one, shall subdue 3 kings. And he shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change time and law. Then the saints shall be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. But the court shall be seated, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and destroy it forever." And so, what's really going to happen is the saints are eventually going to be victorious in their kingdom, but they're going to face persecution. And then right in the middle of this prophecy, Daniel is watching, and he sees God on his throne. He sees the Ancient of Days. And in verses 13 and 14, we read this one a while back in talking about Jesus. He says, "I was watching in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven. He came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. Then to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him." Now, who's that talking about?
Christ.
Talking about Christ. And once again, we have these 4 kingdoms, but we have another kingdom, right? We have God's kingdom that's given to Christ. And so, while we have persecution from these world powers, we also find God giving Christ and the saints a kingdom that is never going to pass away. And so this basic message then is carried over into the last vision that we want to talk about here, and that's in Daniel chapter 8. In Daniel chapter 8, Daniel had a vision specifically of the 2nd and 3rd kingdom in that sequence. In Daniel chapter 8, verses... somebody read verses 1 through 14. We won't have very long to talk about it, but let's go ahead and read it, and then we'll get back Wednesday. We'll be talking about Wednesday what all this means in light of history. But 1 through 14, Daniel 8.
In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one that appeared to me the first time. I saw in the vision, and saw in the vision that I was by the river Ulai.
Mm-hmm.
Then I lifted my eyes and saw, and there standing beside the river was a ram, which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last. I saw the ram pushing westward, northward, southward, so that no animal could withstand it, nor was there any that could deliver from his hand. But he did according to his will and became great. And I was considering, suddenly a male goat came from the west, across the surface of the whole earth, without touching the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Then he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing beside the river, and ran at him with furious power. And I saw him confronting the ram, and he was moved with rage against him, attacked the ram, and broke his 2 horns. There was no power in the ram to withstand him, but he cast him down to the ground and trampled him. And there was no one that could deliver the ram from his hand. Therefore the male goat grew very great. But when he became strong, the large horn was broken. And in place of it, 4 notable ones came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. And out of one of them came a little horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. And it grew up to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the hosts and some of the stars to the ground and trampled them. He even exalted himself as high as the prince of the host. And by him the daily sacrifices were taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Because of transgression, an army was given over to the horn to oppose the daily sacrifices, and he cast truth down to the ground. He did all this and prospered.
All right, that's good enough there. I think that got most of it. So, what 2 kingdoms are we looking at here?
Greek and Roman,
Greek and we have the Persians. The Persians, and once again, the Persians are represented by this 2 horns, and one's higher than the other, right? And then you have this ram that once again, he comes like Alexander the Great. He comes, this male goat, I'm sorry, comes swift and attacks the ram. And he had this great horn between his eyes. And that horn was broken off and 4 stood up in its place. Once again, we'll talk Wednesday night about how Alexander had 4 generals. After he died, he bequeathed his kingdom to 4. And we'll talk more about that. But once again, a similar pattern is repeated in this vision. There's a horn that comes up and does some bad things, doesn't it? And it also as well persecutes God's people. Now in Daniel chapter 7, which kingdom persecuted God's people? In Daniel 7. In Daniel 7, which kingdom was Daniel concerned about? The 4th one, the Roman Empire. And definitely the Romans persecuted Christians. But here, which kingdom is it that does the persecuting? Third one. It's the Grecian Empire. So what all of this is setting up is that during the time between the Testaments, God's people, while remember they turned to Jerusalem to build the temple, and they rebuilt the wall, and there were some great times, they were headed for some dark times. Because there were some people that were going to arise in these world kingdoms, especially out of Greece, that was going to make life very hard for God's people. And we're going to talk more specifically about that part of the biblical story Wednesday, and specifically how someone came from the line of kings of Greece who did some terrible things to God's people. Terrible things. Desecrated the temple. And
God's people had to stay strong and steadfast during that time. And that's, we don't often talk about, a lot of times we talk about Christian persecution, but there was Jewish persecution during the time between the Testaments, and there's some great lessons that we can learn from that. So, we're going to start on page, really we'll be starting on page 61 in our book. Follow along the book covering this at page 61 we'll start on Wednesday night. So then maybe we'll get some questions too. So thank y'all.